Hello, everyone. I'm Coach Chris, and today I'm going to go through some trip planning tips for New York City Marathon and just for traveling to New York City in general. Here's a little background info about me. So I have lived in New York City for 23 years, a very long time. Some of that was spent just across the river in Jersey City. Technically not New York City, but commuting to New York City every single day. I also lived in Brooklyn. I've lived in Queens. I've lived up in Inwood, which we like to call Upper Manhattan. I have lived in upstate New York, but all within very close proximity to New York City. And for the last decade, I've actually lived on the New York City Marathon course on the Upper East Side. So all of this to say, I know a lot about New York City, and I will hopefully help some of you guys with how to plan this trip and to make it the best that it can be. Here also is a little bit about me as a runner coach in case you are curious, but let's get started in this presentation. Here are the things I'm going to cover today. I'm going to overview the course in case some people have no idea what they've signed up for. I'm going to talk about the airports and transit, which is super important to anyone traveling to New York City. Then I'm going to cover the Expo, race morning, and the finish. All right, here is the course map and the course elevation. Again, I just put this out here because maybe some people are not exactly clear on what New York City is or means. So this race is a point-to-point race, and you're going to go through all 5 boroughs of New York City. So New York City is divided. There are islands and there are boroughs. There are also neighborhoods within New York City. So you'll hear a lot of different terms and places described, and they all fall into this big bucket of New York City. But the race starts on Staten Island, which, as you can see, is all the way there to the south. Then you travel north through Brooklyn, you hit Queens, you go into Manhattan, you dip into the Bronx for a hot second, and then you go back into Manhattan where you finish the race right there on what we call like the Upper West Side. That's basically where the finish of the race is in Manhattan. As I mentioned before, this is a series of islands. They're connected by bridges. You're going to run over the bridges when you go through the marathon course itself, but just to distinguish, right? So from there's a clear dividing line, like where Manhattan is. It's its own island surrounded by water on all sides. All right, the airports. There are 3 airports that fall under the category of New York City. One of these airports is not in New York State or New York City at all. It is actually in New Jersey, right across the river, as I mentioned. That one is Newark, New Jersey. But the thing about Newark is it is really close to Midtown Manhattan. It's actually closer to Midtown Manhattan than JFK Airport, which is all the way out in far Queens. But the point of all this to say is all 3 of these airports serve New York City. If you type in your search for coming to the race, I recommend just typing in NYC, period, and we'll give you all results for all 3 of these different airports. As I mentioned, these are the 3 of them. There's LaGuardia, that's LGA, JFK, John F. Kennedy, and Newark. These airports do not have a whole lot of overlap in terms of which airlines fly to them. International flights definitely are prioritized at Newark and JFK. There are some international flights that fly into LaGuardia, but these primarily are flights from someplace like Toronto, which is like a 3-hour flight from New York. So really quite close. In Canada, those are the types of international flights that come into LaGuardia. One thing you'll know when you're looking up these flights, like if you're looking for a United flight, United, it has a hub at Newark. So all the United flights are primarily going to fly into Newark. So my recommendation personally, I would choose the flight based on the airlines that you want to fly on, the least number of connections, and the best flight time, as well as the price. I would not base it on an airport because there's not a huge advantage. Like if you're going to save $200 to fly into LaGuardia or Newark versus JFK, save the $200, right? There's no point in making 2 or 3 connections to fly into a JFK or LaGuardia versus flying into Newark if it's direct from wherever you are originating, right? Pick the best flight. Don't worry about the airport specifically that much. And also, I recommend, if there's certain airlines you're loyal to, I would remain loyal to those airlines and fly into whichever of these locations they are going. So that's how I would pick. I would not designate any one of these particular airports as, superior to another. All of these airports are served by multiple public transportation options. I have listed them here. I just want to note that there's buses and trains that are public transit, and then there's an air train, which is a separate cost and a sort of a separate system. It is $8.50. There's taxis and ride shares to all of these. Do note that ride shares are subject to surge pricing. Any of the taxis you take, taxi or ride share, you're going to pay the tolls. If you cross state lines, there is surcharge. There's surcharge for these things, and so all of these costs are going to add up, and it's going to depend on when and what day of the week, what time, and also what your origin point is, which of these airports, and then where you're going. So that cost is a good amount in flux. There are also express buses. These are privately operated. These are coach buses. This is a good option if you are staying in Midtown and you're like walking distance from where these buses drop. The reason for that is there are no transfers. If you have a lot of luggage, as most people do when they're traveling for races or they're, taking a larger trip, you're hauling a bunch of stuff, right? And hauling a bunch of stuff up and down stairs between bus, between subway, between different modes of transit is taxing. And so, whatever you can use that is the most direct means to get you from the airport to your hotel or wherever you're going, I recommend you look at that option. Rental car I list here because it is an option, but I do not recommend it. And I'm going to talk about over and over again the traffic. The traffic is bad, and there are certain points where it is really horrendous, and you can actually walk faster than the cars or even the buses that are sitting there barely moving and barely inching along. And so really overall, travel by car is not a good idea. As I mentioned, the time of day and the day of the week is a key factor. It's going to impact everything in terms of how long it takes you to get to where you're going and how long it's going to take you to get through the airport, right? So the more crowded times, the rush hour times, these are going to be busier, right? If you pick something very early in the day or very late in the night, you are going to have less hassle in terms of crowds and traffic. That may impact other aspects like, if you get in really late and you're paying for a hotel room that night and you're barely getting any sleep, you may not want to opt for that, but you are going to save a couple of headaches in dealing with less people and less cars on the road. But here we go. We're going to look at the New York City public transit system. So I have here, this is a picture of the New York City subway system. This is, I could do a whole presentation just on transit. I'm not going to. I'm going to just try to fly through this and get in touch on a couple of things. But this is the map. here's a little bit about the cost. So most of us who live here now pay via contactless card or Apple Pay. There is also the MetroCard option. It still exists. Here's a picture of what it looks like. It's $1 just to get this card, and then you load money onto it. I do not recommend this for anybody. This is old school. This should probably just go away and never return, but it exists. There's no real savings here at all to speak of. But it is an option for you if you, I don't know, are nostalgic. The cost to ride the subway or the bus is $2.90 that per ride. That is anytime and anywhere within the system. You can go from the very far north station all the way to the very south station. It's the same price. There's no peak hours for service on New York City public transit, which is great. It's really an affordable, workable system. I highly recommend you use it, and it's going to get you around to basically everywhere you need to go. There is a fare cap for 7 days, and that's maxed at $34. For most of you, I anticipate people are just coming in for, 3 or 4 days, and so you're maybe probably not going to hit this cap. But if you're staying for a lengthier time before the race to enjoy some sights and things, you might hit this cap. And so again, it's just a savings, and it's really cool that it exists. And this works with contactless, right? So all you have to do is make sure you use the same card throughout, right? Don't vary it up. Like, I'll use my Visa, then I'll use my MasterCard, because those are going to register as different rides, and they're not going to hit it's not going to total up completely. Okay, children under 44 inches tall are free. You will see them. They just, duck under the turnstiles and walk through, totally accepted. And that is how that works. There are free transfers within a 2-hour span. Again, this is really great. You can start on the bus, transfer to the subway. You can go from bus to bus, and you can go from subway to bus. All these transfers within a 2-hour window, totally free, no additional cost for that. The system operates 24/7. There are some modifications and some changes. They happen late nights. So in the overnight hours, generally 11 p.m. to like 5 a.m. And they also happen on the weekends. These notices will be posted within the subway system itself. There'll be little signs everywhere, and it'll say what the changes are happening. You can also look this information up online on the New York City, on the MTA website. And then also when you research public transit directions on something like a Google Maps, they will also notify you of those changes. So again, you're not going to necessarily be surprised by this if you are using the internet, which hopefully you are, to figure out how to get around. There are other local systems that they do connect to the New York City public transit system. They are separate systems. You need separate tickets. They are separate cost, but you can get from New Jersey Transit to the New York City subway very easily. A couple of 100 feet between the two of them. Again, it's just separate ticketing system. So the other systems locally, there's the New Jersey Path Train. There are buses that go to and from New Jersey, Long Island, and upstate New York. There is also the commuter rail. These are the different systems: New Jersey Transit, Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and Amtrak. Most of you are not going to use any of these because you're going to stay right smack in the middle of Manhattan in Midtown, and you're never going to venture that far. But if you happen to have, I don't know, friends or family who live a further afield, you will be able to visit them and get to them via any of these transit systems. All of the outer expanses, basically 60 miles in any direction from New York City, all connect to New York City. These are the major transit hubs. I just list them here because, again, these are where these systems generally connect: Grand Central Station, Penn Station, Port Authority, and the World Trade Center. All right, I have some tips about where to stay. this is like completely subjective. And so what I'm offering here is some things for you to think about, right? The important race places, I'm going to show you what all of them are on the map in detail, but you want to know that they are dispersed throughout Manhattan. So you're not going to stay within walking distance of every single place you need to go for the race. You will not. It does not exist for this race. Put that out of your mind. Here are, in general, all the places you're going to need to go just for New York City Marathon, right? So as I said, these are not all places within a very easy walk of one hotel. You will need to use transportation, and that's why I explained how that works. Here's some questions that I recommend you ask yourself. What is most important, cost or convenience? So there's trade-offs, right? More expensive, more easily, more centrally located, more convenient, more smack in the middle of things, that's going to be more expensive for a comparable level of service and luxury versus what you're going to find out in, say, Brooklyn or Queens or New Jersey, right? I don't think this is rocket science. I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary here, right? But if you want to save money, you're going to be further away, or you're going to like dip way down in terms of the quality of the hotel. These are your options. Nobody's getting like something for nothing, right? There's a cost associated. So figure out what your budget is, figure out what's most important to you. If you want to be smack in the middle of everything, you better open your wallet. That's how that works, right? If you don't care and you are able to do a commute, you are going to save yourself a couple of $100s per night for that trade-off, right? Okay, other things to consider. Is room size important? Do you have roommates or family? I can tell you one thing for 100% certainty. New York City does not have a lot of space. We are space challenged here. Some of these hotel rooms, especially those, again, right smack dab in the center of everything, like in Midtown or Times Square area, are teeny tiny. Like you open the door and you're on the bed. The toilet is in the shower almost, right? Like this is how these rooms are arranged. If you are traveling with children or you're traveling with a bunch, a group of friends or whatever, you may want a little bit of privacy. You may want a little bit of room to move around so that everybody's not awake just because one person is awake, or somebody goes to use the bathroom and suddenly the entire room is lit up, right? These are things you want to consider and you want to look at. If you need a larger space, you may be really pushed out further. And again, that is a trade-off for that. But do look at the size of the room before you book it. Are you sensitive to noise or crowds? I do work pretty frequently in Times Square itself. And frankly, for me, I hate it. It's too crowded. It's too noisy. It's like the level there is like at plus 15. And it's a little bit of too much energy for me. However, saying that, if you're coming in from somewhere else and you really want to experience like what the quintessential New York City is, and you want to be like where all the action and the energy is and where the ball drops and where all these movies have been shot, etc., then you may want to stay in Times Square and you may be completely jazzed by that and be like, this is amazing. And that's great. If you want that, that's for you. If, however, you're looking for something a little more quiet, then I recommend not being right in the smack middle of Times Square. There's options all over the place, so just pick somewhere else. Fourth question, what other sites or activities do you plan to do, if any? So if you're staying a little bit longer, let's say you're not just coming in, doing the race and leaving right away, you may want to be somewhere more comfortable. You may want to have, again, a little more room and be somewhere a little more quiet, in which case, again, you may want to be a little further out. So these are things that I think about what your answer is before you get locked into something. Different neighborhoods have different characters. So as I mentioned, I live on the Upper East Side of, like, I lived here for a decade. It is very residential. It is overall very quiet. I am literally like 2.5 miles from the middle of Times Square, but it is a completely different feeling. And the same thing if you go, 3, 4, 5 miles in any direction, there's different feelings to different places, right? So if you do have time to explore, or you want to experience something different, say you've come to New York before, please, I beg of you, feel free to leave Times Square because there's so many other cool places to go, and they're totally different vibes. It is fine to have a short commute, and I'm going to highlight a couple of places where it's easy to get to and from for the race itself. So Long Island City, right there in Queens, right on the edge of the water, lots of hotels there, also multiple transit lines nearby. There's downtown Brooklyn and Dumbo, as you can see right there. Again, lots of options for you. There's also Weehawken and Jersey City. This is over in New Jersey. It's a slightly more complicated because you're in a different state and you're going to be utilizing a different system. But again, all of this in this entire area is connected, so it's possible to get from between all of these areas. Really make sure wherever you book, make sure you have a transit link nearby. I recommend doing the Google Maps public transit search before you finalize any specific hotel, and you may want to compare between different places. So I'm going to show you how to look up public transit directions in the next slide. As I said, I really recommend people just do a test, like how long is it going to take me to get from here to there? If I'm booking a place that has like a really good price, but it's going to take, say, 45 minutes to an hour to get where I want to go, is that worth that trade-off? So here is an example that I used. This is from Google Maps Public Transit. As I said, I used the New York Hotel, New York Hilton in Midtown, which is right on 6th Avenue, 52nd Street, very centrally located. As a test, I put in Whitehall Terminal, which is where the Staten Island Ferry leaves from. This gives you all of the options for how to get from point A, from the hotel to the marathon start line. Basically, how long is it going to take, and what are the transportation options for that? So this gives you the total travel time and how many different trains are involved. If there's certain places where they're not serviced by train, it's going to show you bus options. There are a number of different transit apps to use. Pick whichever one you want. If you type in, New York City Transit, you're going to get 20 different choices. Personally, I just stick with Google Maps, again, just for ease of convenience sake, and I don't want 30 different apps for 30 different places that I may go to. But it's not that particular, as long as it can tell you how to get on which subway at which station, that's what you want. Win. I'm going to keep highlighting this because it's super important. One thing I want to note is that if you're like considering in your head, like, oh, maybe I want to make this trip really quick and I'm going to take a cab, look and see what that travel time is by comparison. So for example, in this example, you can see at the top, right? By car, this trip is 22 minutes. By subway, this trip is 28 minutes. Depending upon what time of day you're looking to make this trip, that car trip could possibly be 45 minutes. It could be double the amount of time that it would take via subway, just because of traffic and what time of day you're looking to get from point A to point B, right? So again, all of this is important, and when you're looking things up, you can input the time and the day of the week. So like a weekend versus a weekday, right? Those are going to show different times, different travel times. So things to look for, just to put into your brain when you're doing this research. Is it walkable? Some places are going to be faster to just walk to. How many transfers are required? So you can see here, there are some options where it's like, you can take 3 different trains. I overall don't recommend that, especially for tourists that are coming in, because it just gets more complicated. It's more places to get lost in between the stations and all of that, right? Why make it that, why add in that extra layer when you can just get on one train and go the entire way? Another thing, how many options are there? So the more trains, different train lines that you're near, the better your travel options are. So as you can see here, like, as an example, from this New York Hilton Midtown, if you go to the east, you have different train lines versus if you go to the west. And both of these are within relative walking distance of each other, right? But totally different lines. And so this gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of service modifications or, service disruptions. Another question, how far is the walk before and after the subway? So a lot, every hotel you can book is within some walking distance of a subway station. It's just a question of how long that walk is, right? So some places might have a 20-minute walk just to get to the subway station. Some places might have even a 5-minute walk or even less, right? So you can see how easily that would add on the time if it's something like 20 minutes just to walk to the station itself. These are again, all things you want to research really before you book a place and get locked in. Okay, so now I'm going to go, this next part, I'm going to go through all of the race specific places so you know in your head, where do I have to go for the race? What is the weekend involved? These are all the different locations. The Expo, you got to go to the Expo. The Expo happens at Jacob Javits Center, which is on 11th Avenue at 36th Street. It is basically all the way on the west side, almost in the Hudson River. These are the hours for the Expo. It is open for 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Basically all day in those options. You have to go yourself. This is very important. You cannot send somebody else to go on your behalf. I do not recommend booking a flight where you do not arrive until Saturday. That's extremely risky. What happens if your flight is delayed, right? Whatever time you plan to land at the airport, I would in your head give yourself a buffer of 2 hours just to get off the plane, through baggage, customs, immigration, etc., out of the airport and to wherever you're trying to go. That is a huge buffer, and it's excessive, right? But it's going to take some amount of time, right? So I wouldn't plan to say, well, I'm going to land on Saturday at 10 a.m. So I'm going to have a whole lot of time to get to the Expo. That is risky. Again, just consider how long it's going to take to get from places point A to point B, and also consider you're going to be fighting through crowds for all of this. All right. The Expo has been made more convenient because they opened this 7 train station. This is relatively new. This was in a couple of years, just right before COVID, actually. And that's that purple star on the map there. That's the 7 train, and it's the purple line. It goes to 34th Street and Hudson Yards. And that's about less than a 10-minute walk to get to the Javits Center. You also have further away the 123 or the ACE at 34th Street Penn Station. That's the orange star on the map. That's quite a bit longer walk. We're talking about 20 minutes ish from there to the Jacob Javits Center. But that is a lot more different train lines and a larger station at that terminal. If you are coming from the far east side, you can take the M34 crosstown bus. It goes all the way across 34th from east all the way to all the way to the west, and it will drop you right next to the Javits Center, so like less than a 5-minute walk. If you are coming from New Jersey or points west, this New York Waterways ferry is going to drop you like literally a block from the Javits Center. So again, that might be an option for you if you are planning to stay in New Jersey. Really, I want everybody, I stressed this before, but go to the expo as soon as you can. Saturday is the busiest day. Thursday is the least busy day for obvious reasons. So if you have the availability of time and money to get yourself to New York City and get yourself to the expo before late Friday night or Saturday, you are going to help yourself in terms of stress, crowds, and dealing with lines and all of that at the expo. The expo is really cool. I just have some pictures here of what it looks like. Again, this is a huge exhibit hall. It's all glass. The New York City Marathon part of the Jacob Javits Center is huge and expansive. Lots of shopping, lots of different vendors, but it's crowded, right? So there's a lot of people. This race has 50, over 50,000 people, more like 53,000, 54,000 people. And they're all going to the expo. So you need to budget that into your trip and travel times. Okay, gear check. This is another place you may possibly need to go, and you need to make sure you give yourself time for this. So in order to gear check, you have to go on either Friday or Saturday. Those are the only 2 days. You have to go to Central Park to this Rumsey playfield. And so this is a whole separate excursion, a separate location. You are going to take the official clear bag that you pick up at the expo, and you're going to stuff it with your gear, and then you're going to have to take that to Central Park. There is no bag drop at the start in Fort Wadsworth, right? So this is one of those things you need to figure out if you're going to run with your phone or if you're not, because you're not going to check it and leave it there for 2 days. So these are things you need to consider. So whatever you're going to drop in your gear check bag, it's going to be totally separate from what you end up starting the race with. This location here in Central Park, the Rumsey Playfield, you can get to from either the east or the west. It's basically in the middle of Central Park at 72nd Street. This is the drop-off schedule, as I said, Friday and Saturday, 9 to 5. These are the options. So if this is something you think you need to do or you're planning on doing, give yourself time for that. Everyone gets a poncho, so you may not need to do gear check. I will say if you have people that are going to meet you after the race, give them your stuff, give them warm clothes and different layers, dry layers that you can change into, have them meet you with that. And then just use the poncho to get yourself to them. But if you do not have that as an option and you are staying a little bit further away, you are going to want to gear check. Here's a picture of what the poncho looks like. It's actually orange now. They changed the color, but it's the same poncho. It's fleece inside. It has a hood. It's Velcro. It's thick. It is warm. But if you are staying in, say, Brooklyn or Queens, it's going to take you 35, 45 minutes plus to get back to your lodgings after the race, after crossing the finish line. And this poncho is not going to be enough. Remember, this race is in November in New York City, and it is cold. And you are going to be sweaty, and your running clothes are going to be wet, right, and damp. So you're going to want to get out of those and not get sick. Here's the timeline for the day. This is very important because the transportation to the start is going to be influenced by what time you're starting the race. So all of that morning stuff is professionals, and none of us really care about that. But I do want to point out there are 5 different waves, and the first wave starts at 9:10, and the last wave, which is wave 5, starts at 11:30. So there is a huge difference between wave 1 and wave 5. You are not going to get the information about which wave specifically you are in until October. But I think most of us can use our logic brains to make an educated guess, right? So if you're on the faster side, you are going to be in one of those early waves, wave 1 or wave 2. If you are on the not as fast side, you are going to be in one of the later waves, the wave 4 or wave 5, right? And so that should influence both where you stay, but also what transportation you use to get to the start, and I'm going to explain why. Again, this is just some race facts. So there are 3 different start lines of the race, blue, orange, and pink. There are 5 waves to the race, as I said, and there are 6 corrals, A through F, and each of these corrals have basically 900 people. So big race, over 50,000 people doing this race, and everybody's trying to get to the same place at the same time. Use your brain to, accommodate dealing with crowds and budgeting how you're going to spend your morning. There are 3 official transportation options. These are provided by NYer. You do not have to pay for these, but you will have to select them. The selection for these is in August. I'm going to say that again. The selection for the 3 transportation options comes in August. These are the options: Midtown Bus, Staten Island Ferry, or New Jersey Bus. Separate to that, asterisk, there are people that are running for the larger charities, and they will have their own private charity bus option. If that is you, like say you're running for Team for Kids, none of this applies to you because you can take Team for Kids bus. But I am talking about what everybody else, the masses of the runners, they're not going to have that private charity bus option, and these are the things that you're going to have to pick. So the Midtown Bus leaves from 5th Avenue and 42nd Street and from the New York Public Library. Staten Island Ferry leaves from Whitehall Terminal. That's the name of the terminal, Whitehall Terminal, and that is in Battery Park, the very far south tip of Manhattan. The New Jersey Bus leaves from MetLife Stadium, which is also known as the Meadowlands, which again is over in New Jersey, and that leaves from the parking lot near Quest Diagnosis. I'm going to show you maps for more of this information. Here is where the Midtown Bus leaves from. As I said, New York Public Library. Also, you can search for it via map using the keyword Bryant Park because it's right there. All of these buses line up on 5th Avenue and they load continuously. This is a single mode of transport to get you to Fort Wadsworth. You do not have to transfer, which is nice. Problem is, not problem but concern you want to think of, the buses only leave early. The buses are only at 5, 5:36, 6:30. That is it. Those are the only times for the buses. So if you're in wave 5, you probably don't want to take the bus. If you're in wave 3 even, you probably don't want to take the bus because that means sitting at Fort Wadsworth for like 3-4 hours. And I'm going to show you what Fort Wadsworth looks like, but it's not that, it's fine, but it's not like pleasant. So again, bus is great and it leaves right from Midtown, but only on the early side. Numerous subways really close by. If you're staying in Times Square, you're going to be able to walk to this Midtown Bus option. And it's very close and very convenient. Like I said, right, boom, central in the middle. However, if you're in one of those later waves, I do not recommend this. This is the other option, Staten Island Ferry. It leaves from the very tip of the south end of Manhattan. As I said, Battery Park is another key word for that. The ferry is 2 parts. So if you take the Staten Island Ferry, you are also still going to take a bus. How does this work? You get on the Staten Island Ferry at the south end of Manhattan. It takes you over across to Staten Island itself. You get off at the Staten Island side there, and then you will board a bus that will take you to Fort Wadsworth. So this is a 2-part journey, and therefore it's a little more complicated, right? The benefits to this, one of the reasons a lot of people take this option and they like this option is because the Staten Island Ferry is scenic. You get to go by the Statue of Liberty. You have the beautiful views of downtown Manhattan, the Manhattan skyline. It's peaceful, it's interesting. Most of us don't ride a boat in our normal, like everyday life. And so those are the pluses to taking the Staten Island Ferry. But I do want to note that the Staten Island Ferry is free and it's every single day public transportation. It's a 30-minute ride and they leave every 30 minutes. So if you happen to be a person who, let's say, is in wave 1 or wave 2 and you're staying for a couple of days, you can go take the Staten Island Ferry as a tourist on Monday or Tuesday after the race. that is an option. And you can get all of those scenic things without having to take the Staten Island Ferry on race morning. Now, that said, if you want to take Staten Island Ferry on race morning and you're in wave 1 or 2, by all means, it's definitely an option for you. If you're in one of the later waves, as I mentioned, I really recommend this because it will run throughout the morning, way later than the Midtown Bus. These are all the stations nearby. It's really convenient. Even if you are staying in Times Square, it's really easy to get to Battery Park. It is serviced by the 1 line, which is red, the NW, which is yellow, or the 4-5, which is green. All very close by. All right, I'm going to show you a little bit about the start map. Again, this is just to show you what Fort Wadsworth looks like. This is on Staten Island at the Start Village, where you're going to wait. Fort Wadsworth is the name of that. The drop-off points vary by the mode of transit. The bridge closes at 7 a.m., as does the Staten Island Expressway. Again, that's why the buses have to get there early. They are closing the bridge so that the pro runners can run across it. They cannot be shuttling runners across the Verrazano Bridge while runners are then running across the Verrazano Bridge, right? It's a conflict. So they have to get the buses over, close the bridge, and then the runners can go across. This is all happening on the Verrazano Bridge, which leads into Staten Island. These are the different modes. So the ferry is going to drop you off there to the north. The Midtown Bus is going to drop you off there in the middle. And this rideshare option, if you happen to be staying in Staten Island the night before, I do not recommend this at all, but you can opt for that. But if you do, you're going to get dropped there to the south end for this rideshare drop-off. You can walk in between any of these colored villages, so really it doesn't matter exactly where you get dropped off because you can walk between the orange, blue, or pink. They do have amenities at all of these villages. It's not that, it is nice. They give you things. There's water, there's Gatorade, there's energy bars. Dunkin' Donuts is there. They have coffee, tea, hot cocoa, and they have bagels. So it is nice in that sense, but still, if you're wave 5, you probably don't want to get out there and spend like 4 hours of your morning in these villages. I'll show you pictures of what it looks like. This is like an example of one of the private tents, the charity tents. If you happen to be a person that is running for charity and the larger charities, you do have a private tent that is going to be heated, that is going to have private bathrooms for you. I mean, there's still porta potties, but they're like private to the charity. And so you will be more comfortable. So if that is if that applies to you, then it may not be so bad to go out there early because, again, you're going to have a space to be warm, to use the bathroom, and to be semi-comfortable. But for everybody else, you are just going to be out in the elements. It's mostly grass fields. There are some concrete walkways and some concrete parking lots that lead between the different places, but it's not that comfortable. Here's a picture of what everybody looks like splayed out, right? As I said before, it's in November in New York City, and it is most often cold in that time, at the time of day, right? So 30s, 40s, and you're sitting out there for a couple of hours. Most people have sleeping bags, blankets, all kinds of things like that. Again, but it's not a place that you're going to want to spend extra time. On the low end, I would say most people will spend an hour or 2. And on the higher end, some people are going to be out there for 3 or 4 hours. But I think most people probably want to budget their morning so that they minimize the amount of time they're sitting out at Fort Wadsworth in the elements. All right, now I'm going to show you a map of the finish. Again, this is something you want to think about just in terms of planning your entire day and your entire morning, how long everything is going to take, and where you're going to stay and how long it's going to take you to get from the different race locations. So here's the finish. This whole area that's blocked off, that's the runners area. That is all secured. And so if you have people meeting you, they have to meet you outside of the runners area. The runners area, because it is so expansive, it takes you a really long time to cross the finish line to get out of the runners area. So as I was saying, you're not going to cross the finish line and then have mom and dad, friend, family, etc., roommate right there with you, to meet you with your clothes. It's going to take way longer than that, and you need to budget in the time. That's why I do recommend, if you are staying somewhere far, then that involves transit, then you're definitely going to want to do a gear check, because all of this time adds up. So this is the designated family reunion area. It is, as I mentioned, you can see it's south of the runners area. And all of this involves walking. So it's 10 blocks just to cross the finish line and then exit. The closest exit, you have to go up all the way north to 77th Street, West 77th Street and Central Park West. That is where you exit Central Park. And then from there, you can walk out of the runners area. If you happen to find a hotel there on the Upper West Side, you may be within walking distance. If you're staying in Times Square, you are probably going to want to exit to one of the subways to take you back to your hotel. I said this, expect a lengthy walk. Everybody's just walking a lot. It takes a long time because you just ran a marathon. So everybody's like shuffling along. And so, as I said, you're going to get cold quickly. Your clothes are going to be damp, probably from sweat and water and everything else. So, having something to change into is certainly beneficial. There are multiple subway stations nearby. I've highlighted them all here. It connects you to a lot of different places. As I mentioned, I live on the Upper East Side, and I live on the east side of the marathon course. So for me to get home from the marathon itself, it takes forever. I'm like 3 miles as the crow flies from the finish line of the marathon to my home. However, it will take me, an hour to get back home following New York City Marathon, because the roads are closed in multiple directions. Traffic is snarled up piled up. Cars are barely moving. Buses are rerouted, right? And so it is really hard for me to get back home after the race, even though I live like right there. And so again, these are things you want to consider and budget in. If you're a person who likes to finish the race and get back to your hotel as soon as possible, then plan your hotel based on this finish map. That is it. I think I've given a lot of information. I probably threw out like 800 different things. And some of it I just sort of glossed over. So if you have additional questions, please feel free to ask me, type it in the comments, send me an email via my website. Either way, I hope everybody has a great trip to New York City. As I mentioned, this is my home and it has been my home for a very long time. And it's really important to me that everybody really enjoys themselves. So if I can help you in any way, figure out or navigate different parts of this city, please let me know. Otherwise, welcome, come to New York, have a great time, have a great race, and thank you for watching.